I paired up with a helicopter company named Wolf Air in Los Angeles, and they have a really fabulous stabilized helicopter mount called the Gyron Horizon. And we went out and shot some stuff, and we'll show that to you now, and we'll tell you how we did it afterwards. So that was some of the footage we shot. It was shot in a very interesting manner because the lens is so wide. I had to instruct the helicopter pilots to fly very, very close to the buildings. At times we were 3 meters from the buildings as we passed them. The lens was mounted on an Alexa M, and it's a two-part system where the camera is mounted in the stabilized mount, and then there's a cable that comes back, fiber optic, back to the camera body, as you'll see sitting here on the stand. And it was an XT version, so we're able to record ARRI RAW in the camera. And the advantage of this is the recorder part is in the helicopter with you. And many times you could tell we were out to sea. We're way out over the water. There's no place to land. If the camera is mounted in the stabilized mount out on the front of the helicopter, when you fill up the data cartridge, you have to go find a place to land. And you're not allowed to land just anywhere in Los Angeles or in any big cities. You sometimes have to return to the airport, which could be a half-hour trip. And while that's happening, maybe the sun is setting. So the beautiful advantage of this is the camera with the recorder part was sitting right beside us. So when we filled up the data cartridge, we just ejected it, plugged in another one, and kept shooting. So the unique aspect of this lens, and you probably saw when the motion footage was running, is all of the lines are not curved. They're very straight. You see that? And for a wide-angle lens, that is very unique. Usually wide-angle lenses have a lot of curvature near the edge. This lens has extremely low distortion, as you can see here. Now granted, there's a lot of perspective to the buildings, as you would expect when you're looking down at them, but notice all the lines are very straight. Advantages of that are, artistically, I think that's a more appealing, less distracting look, but also if you're doing post effects, that's incredibly important. If you're, say, superimposing CG elements, whether it be flying cars around through here or monsters crawling over the buildings, they need to marry their work into your work. And if there's all kinds of lens distortion, that makes their work all that much harder. So the fact that this lens is very, very non-distorted is beautiful. It's also very high resolution. So this lens is going to work well into the future as higher resolution imaging systems become available. Another feature the lens has is the built-in lens data system. If you're not familiar with that, the front of the Alexa has contacts that communicate to the lens so that the camera knows the focal length, the focus position, and the aperture at any given moment, and records that in the header of the ARRI RAW or the ProRes file, so that downstream in post-production, at any frame, the post-production people can call up that metadata and see that, oh, the lens was at 16 millimeters and the t-stop was 8 and focused at 20 meters at this given moment, and then that'll help them determine in their CG world where to put the monster crawling the building, things like that. The image circle diameter more than covers the open gate ARRI RAW, so you can use it with any Alexa camera. And here's another interesting thing. It's kind of a detail that becomes important to the post-production people, is the exit pupil is fixed. Many zoom lenses, as you zoom the lens, the entrance pupil moves. And the entrance pupil is that fixed point in space where the image comes together. And if that is moving during the shot, say you're zooming, that makes the post people nuts, because things that are closer to the camera will start moving relative to things that are farther from the camera, where this lens is specifically designed so it stays in the same place as you're zooming the lens. That again makes the post people very happy. One of the things that I saw when I was given this prototype lens, I was over at the ARRI office. Of course, I put it up on the lens projector. I was completely amazed at how sharp this lens is all the way out to the corner. Absolutely amazed. So the helicopter. This is a very unusual helicopter. It happens to be German made by a company called Messerschmitt Billkohl-Bohm. It's called a BO-105. It's the only one of its kind. It was built on order for the gentleman named Steve Fawcett. And Steve was going to fly around the world and set world records. So it had ferry tanks in it so it could cover long over water distances. But here's the trick. He was going to land on the top of the highest point of every mountain in every continent. So he was going to land on top of Everest. He was going to land on top of the highest point in Antarctica and every other continent. So this is a very powerful helicopter. It has 2 engines in it that's in the Black Hawk helicopter, and it weighs half of what a Black Hawk helicopter does, and it has 2 of those engines. So in the long over water flights, you could shut down one engine and save fuel. It will climb to over 20,000 feet straight up. Most helicopters have to be flying forward to do that. So during our filmmaking, we could climb over the top of any building we wanted to from really down low at street level. And it has a rotor system from a much bigger helicopter. So it's perfectly suited for what we are doing. Now the helicopter mount's made by a company called Gyron. They call it the Gyron Horizon. And the beauty of the system, it has dual nested gimbals. Most systems have 1, and they try to do all other stabilizing with that. This one has 2. The inner gimbal system uses linear high-frequency motors that can, up to 20 kilohertz, stabilize all the really high-frequency jitter that's going to be coming from everything that's happening from the helicopter. This is the camera assembled with the Alexa M camera and the lens, and then everything is very compact, so they use their own servo control motors, but it easily integrated. The only part they had to make was this lens support to fit this lens into their system. And then this is where I'm sitting in the back of the helicopter, but like I was saying, the camera body is right beside me on the seat. The controls are a little bit on the opposite side, so I use this RCU4, which I would just simply pick up, and I could change the frame rate or the shutter angle of the camera ISO quickly using that device. And then a waveform monitor, I judge exposure, and then I'm using this monitor looking at the Rexona 9 output for framing and focus, and I'm focusing and zooming, panning, and tilting with this control that's on my lap. The camera is connected with a fiber optic cable, this big one here, out to the camera head that's in the stabilized mount on the front. And I have to thank all of the people that helped me make this possible. The people from ARRI Inc. in Los Angeles, Glenn Kennel, Bill Russell, Stefan Lucas Bradley, who really helped with the technology, and Freddie Molina. And then the people from Wolf Air, Dan Wolf particularly, and the amazing pilots, John Tamburo and John Ryan, that had no concern or no fear of flying just a couple meters away from these gigantic buildings in downtown LA, or when you saw us flying over the water, we were literally within half a meter of the water or lower. Like, I looked out the window and it looked like we're in a boat. So I was a little bit concerned doing that, because one little mistake we would have gone into the water. But these guys had no fear of doing that. So is there any questions about the lens? You're welcome to come look at it here and play with it. It's right here on the stand. Or what we did or how we did this. Well, thank you very, very much. I appreciate it. I'm glad you enjoyed the wonderful images made by this system.